Okay, we're up and running. Welcome everybody to the City Council meeting for April 6, 2021. Meeting virtually as we have been for some time. I'll note that we are going to hold a separate work study session after the council meeting, particularly pointing that back out to council members. Don't go away too quickly. Would the clerk please confirm the roll?
All council members are present with the exception of Council Member Garcia, Your Honor.
Thank you. First on tonight's agenda, we have the consent agenda. We have 11 items on that agenda. May I get a motion?
So moved.
I got a second. A motion by Mr. Godhell, second by Mr. Loudenback. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Motion carries. And we are unanimous. Citizen comments. At this time, if you are attending tonight as a member of the public and wish to speak on an item not on the main agenda, we would invite you to indicate so in the chat box or by *9 if you've called in by your phone. And we will call upon you. You will have 3 minutes. To which you would start, please, with your name and address for the record. And we'll pause momentarily, give people a chance to indicate.
I'm not seeing anyone.
Seeing none. In that case, we will move on to announcements and messages. And on tonight's agenda, we have a proclamation, a very special one for our town. I'm glancing around I see what looks like the North Bend Theater. There's Miss Burrows. So this evening, thank you for attending with us tonight. I would love to read this proclamation from the mayor's office. Whereas local theaters first began entertaining the citizens of the fledgling town of North Bend in the area of the Snoqualmie Valley in the 1910s with silent movies and the early talkies movies. And whereas the North Bend Theater began entertaining the citizens in the 1930s in the McClellan Building, and whereas the North Bend Theater built a new theater in the classic Art Moderne architectural style with a stepped parapet and curved corners accented by incised banding designed by William Blaisdell and Herb Johnson, built by Emmett Jackson and owned and maintained by J2 and others. And whereas the North Bend Theater celebrated its grand opening on April 9th, 1941, with 412 new red plush seats, a small seating area upstairs, a crying room, a silver screen with the latest in sound equipment and air conditioning, and a large neon sign that could be seen from a long distance. And whereas the North Bend Theater was designated a historic landmark by the King County Landmarks Commission in 1997. And whereas the North Bend Theater has continuously operated as a movie theater since April 9th, 1941, serving as a community gathering space and downtown North Bend anchor. And whereas the North Bend Theater will celebrate its 80th continuous year as a local historic independent movie theater on April 9th, 2021, and will continue to entertain and delight future generations of North Bend and the Snoqualmie Valley. Now, therefore, I, Rob McFarland, Mayor, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 9th, 2021 as North Bend Theater Day in the city of North Bend, and call upon all citizens to join in the celebration of movie popcorn and sharing movies as a community at our local, historic, independent movie theater. Signed this 6th day of April, 2021. And I've got to say, I love that theater. It's been a part of us since we moved here to the Valley. It's a wonderful gathering place, and it certainly is an icon for the community. So thank you, Beth Burrows and Kevin Burrows, for continuing in that tradition. And with that, Beth, if you would like to say anything, we would happily welcome your comments.
Well, I appreciate everything that you do, and everybody has supported the theater through this last really hard year, and we're still here and we're still alive, and we're gonna be great caretakers of this wonderful building for generations to come. So thank you all very much for letting us have North Bend Theater Day. We really appreciate it, and we'd like to invite you down on Friday. We're going to have a free showing of Casablanca, and we're going to give a free movie goodie box. So if you'd like to come at 6:30, we'll have a Q&A about the theater and the history, and then we'll show the movie at 7. And Saturday morning, we're going to have an old-fashioned kids matinee at 10. You have to pay a quarter to get in, so save up your quarters. And we'll show a cartoon and an old cereal, and then a children's movie called The Sandlot. So we're just going to have some fun this weekend.
Very exciting. Council, Mr. Loudenbeck.
Thanks. Hey, Beth, we sure appreciate everything you've done to help weather the storm and continue the tradition of the North Bend Theater. It is a local icon and landmark, and you certainly have been a great steward of it, and we look forward to supporting you as we come out of this pandemic. You might just take a moment to tell us what your feature is this week. I believe we have monsters inhabiting the North Bend Theater this week. Maybe you'd like to let us know about that.
We do. On Saturday at 6, we're showing Godzilla versus Kong. So a lot of great action, so many fights. People love it. So, and then of course, Sunday night, we have Goldfinger from 1965.
Man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mr. Godhill.
Yeah, Beth, I'd just like to say thank you for keeping that treasure up. I moved here when my daughter was 1 year old, and having the crying room to be able to go see movies is something I remember. And taking both my daughters to their first movie, in their life was at that theater. And that's one thing as they move, one's in Gonzaga, one's going to be moving. The one thing that they, remember fondly is that theater. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you guys have done with that theater, and that it's been supported so long. And it really is a gem of the community.
It's taken, every owner of this place has loved it and taken great care of it and been such a part of our community. We just hope to do as well as our ancestors have done. So
yeah.
I think Alan used the crying room last night after that Gonzaga loss, didn't you?
That was sad.
Jonathan, too soon.
Good jumping in there, Jonathan. Right on the tip of the tongue.
Well, I don't know. Jonathan has a little crying that he can recall from the North Bend Theater. I recall a large, full-length poster of Mr. Rosen on a certain birthday in which he was celebrating the 40-year-old virgin, and it was Jonathan's picture on the billboard.
Right behind me,
quite a
still here.
memorable birthday,
Jonathan, can you move your camera so we can see it?
Must have been a very long time ago.
Yeah, I had hair then.
Oh dear. Okay, we're devolving. Anyone else that would like to address Beth? Heather, Ms. Colin.
Beth, thank you for being the caregiver for the North Bend Theater. And I echo Alan that it is an icon, but it's where our children grow up. It was the first time my kids got to go somewhere on their own was at the theater. And it's kind of a rites of passage. So it's amazing and we all love it. And thank you so much.
Oh, it's entirely our pleasure and our honor and our responsibility. So thank you. We're really supported so much by our community. We're super lucky. So.
Anyone else? Mary, were you waving? Yes.
Yep, I am waving. Beth, I love you and your family, and your stewardship is it's just fantastic. So thank you for everything you do. And all the families prior to you, I knew every one of them that were stewards of that lovely place. So I love watching the banners change and the celebration, the joy it brings to people and the fun. So carrying it on, I think it's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And it's a community effort. So thank you to all of you, really.
And I'll just echo everybody else's sentiments, along with the fond memories. I think it was Hannah Montana movie, something like that, that took my my oldest to. It was her birthday, and somehow the dates were wrong on the marquee and what was in the paper. And we showed up like 2.5 hours early, and we were able to go in, and they looked at the time and said, you know what? We can screen it privately right now before the actual publicized time. So we got our own screening of Hannah Montana. I would have rather it been Star Wars or Casablanca or something like that. But no, so good fond memories, and thank you for your stewardship and keeping it going on. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you. And I'll close it out. That's a great reminder, Brent. And that's what a community theater can do. They can make choices. And I'll say, and for me, 2 of my top 5 movies of all time. So I annually, most all years, go at Christmas time to cry through It's a Wonderful Life. And so I don't use the crying room, Alan. And I'm totally stoked that you're showing Casablanca. So if at all possible, I will be there on Friday. That is probably the greatest movie of all time. So that is fantastic. Beth, thank you again so much for being with us tonight, for doing all the things that you do, particularly for taking such great care of this icon. We will get the official proclamation to you by hand or by mail. I don't know. Susie makes the magic work. And
We'll just send it by a horse. We'll drop saddle up a horse and trot it down.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next on our agenda, item number 13, which seems a really big number for as quickly as we've been able to move through things here tonight. But we have AB 21-037, an ordinance amending North Bend Municipal Code regarding form-based code. Mr. Reynolds. Oh, not hearing you well. Not quite the Dave Miller effect, but it was good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, was he hanging around Dave Miller again?
I spent too much time in the crying room. No,
Your record player was on slow.
Yeah. No, it's my headphones. I unplugged.
Well, we can hear you now.
It doesn't wake up.
You just stay away from that helium and we'll do okay, all right?
Okay, the introduction for tonight is a proposed change to the downtown commercial zone, a transition to form-based codes from traditional segregated use-based zoning. The focus of form-based codes is to emphasize the appearance of the building's relationship to the street, other buildings, and open space. So the main focus is not the uses inside, such as typical codes focus on in the United States, but more to the relationships to their surroundings. And for more detail on the differences between the existing downtown commercial zone code and the form-based codes, page 101 in your packet in the agenda bill has a list of the differences. So this effort is a part of a grant for affordable housing with the Washington State Department of Commerce. But in the end, this is your code, not the Department of Commerce's. And so staff is looking beyond the confines of the grant to be sure that this code fits you, that is the council and the North Bend residents. And so the format of this code is similar to our design standards in that there's a standalone document that's referenced within the code. So it's essentially 3 parts. There's 1810, where the downtown commercial zone currently sits. Those parts are stricken for the DC zone and referenced in 1812. And that wasn't a part of the packet in this round, but there's a link within the AB to the work study packet, which had it. We just wanted to focus on the materials that we should be reviewing mostly. So the first part is the stricken 1810. The second part is the new 1812, which references the regulating plan. And then the regulating plan, which is really the meat and potatoes of this effort. That's pages 105 to 142 in your packet. And the content of the regulating plan includes an introduction explaining form-based codes and the context within the city, and then the two proposed transects that we have within the DC zone. So that's the DC core, the downtown commercial core, and downtown commercial mixed use. And there's regulations on bulk and dimensional standards in the section. There's some affordable housing provisions. Then there are building standards, which has a suite of buildings per each transect, and frontage standards, street standards, public open space and park standards, and then finally a master planning provision. And so a public hearing with all the required notifications happened on February 25th. We received 3 comments. One of them was from an agency and 2 from the public. They were all positive comments for the code change. We also did receive 1 other positive comment from master builders, which came after. Those were all provided in your work study packet. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 recommending to approve the code on March 11th. And then there was a council work study on March 23rd, where comments were addressed as is shown in the agenda bill, page 102 in your packet. Also, clarifications from the work study are in the AB. That's in 102 as well. So staff feels these code changes meet several of our comp plan goals, that they fit well with our downtown master plan, and fit well with the content that we gained from a comprehensive community survey we did last August. And we feel that they will promote affordable housing. Staff supports the adoptions of these codes. Thank you.
Thank you. Clarifying questions for Mr. Reynolds or other staff before we ask for public comment? I know we had the subject of this in a work study. Ms. Colon.
It says that if council would like to explore reducing heights within the DC zone, this is a measure that could go back to the Planning Commission for public hearing. And I'm wondering if that's something we could do. And also, Jesse, could you show us the heights and the view of the mountain that you showed to the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I can pull up that document. If you just give me a second, I can get that open. But staff's thought on addressing heights is that that should go to Planning Commission for a public hearing, and that it's should be a separate effort. Hold on just a second.
So Jesse, let me, as you're looking for that, I just want to clarify whether you or Rebecca answers that. I think what you're suggesting is staff is saying that separate from this particular code proposal, that would be a specific proposed change that would be done separately. Is that what you're saying? Or taken up as prior to approving form-based code?
Staff's recommendation would be to do it separately, since we aren't recommending changing the code, but it's ultimately up to the council how we move forward.
Thank you.
So I will share my screen and show those views. Oh, looks like I cannot share my screen. Don, is it possible to?
Mr. Godhelp?
You should be able to now, Jesse.
Councilmember Godhelp.
There we go, unmute. So my real quick question is this document that we're approving does have the 45-foot length or height limits. But if I'm reading this document right, and I need clarification so that everybody understand, the downtown, actually core of the downtown does not go to 45 feet. Because if you look at the historic district, or let's rephrase it, the historic district is not allowed to go over 45. Is that true or not true?
That's true. If you turn to page 120 in your packet or page 14 within the regulating plan, then figure 4 has maximum allowable heights. And
it's 118th in our package. You're right, it's number 14. And it shows around the historic district that it can't go to 45. So the change, if council wanted, would be for the other items off of the historic district not going to 45, just to clarify that.
Thank you. In the packet, and I think, Alan, I think you just said this, I'm seeing it on page 120 is the map of the downtown area. And if I'm reading it correctly, the darker blue is the 45-foot maximum, which is in existing code. And the lighter blue is the existing code of 35-foot, which is most of the area outside of the darker blue area, but also includes the historic district. So just here, there.
Really quickly with that, are there any buildings in that area that are 45 feet that you could look at that could give you an idea of scale compared to everything else currently?
There are not, but we have some demonstration renderings from our consultant architects with this effort that I'm happy to share with you.
Okay.
So, and again, just to remind, I think we're still in that zone, but remember, we're just asking the clarifying questions right now. Ms. Colon, I saw your hand back up. I'm sorry.
So the map you were referring to is actually page 118. And so the historic district, which I assume is just like the corner of North Bend and Bendigo, and then all around that could be 45. So you'd have like the historic district surrounded by these 4-story buildings, which seems odd to me.
One of the reasons we would recommend taking it separately back is because we would want to specifically, instead of what we did for this project, which is advertise an entire form-based code, we'd want to go back and notify the properties that were interested in changing the height specifically with a notice about a height discussion individually. So that was one of the reasons why we had suggested to take it back after the plan, in a sense, if we were going to change it from the existing height requirements.
Yeah, I think one thing to note is, yeah, the heights aren't changing. It is an ordinance that was enacted in 2008, so it's been around for a while. And actually, these codes address the historic district better than the existing codes do in that, as far as like the character of the facades of the buildings, as well as required setbacks. If you turn to, it sounds like our packet pages are a little different. So if you turn to page 12, of the regulating plan, those numbers are on the bottom center of the pages. The graphic in the upper right shows that there has to be a 25-foot step back for buildings where 45 feet is allowed, a step back of 25 feet, whereas that's not currently a requirement. So the form-based codes are more onerous than the existing codes are in terms of relationship to the historic district.
Thank you. With that clarification, I'm going to suggest we'll move and see if we have any public comment, and then we'll return to Q&A and discussion among council. So if you're a member of the public and you wish to speak on this agenda item, please indicate in the chat box or by *9 on your phone. We'll pause just a moment.
Mike Thomas, please unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Michael Thomas, 1231 LaForest Drive, SC. I want to echo the line of questioning around the 45-foot height limit. I do understand that that was intended not to apply to the historic district, but to the other parts of downtown. I'm concerned about obviously the view corridors, which was one of the conceptual renderings that I think should be put up. Do we still have sufficient protection of the view corridors downtown in whole, with only limiting the historic district to 35 feet? I think is an excellent question to be raised. I'm of course concerned about additional densification of downtown, whether for commercial or residential. As we know, we have pressing infrastructure concerns, particularly around water. And I do want to remind folks of an appeal was filed opposing the city's water system plan and Department of Health action under case 21-204318-2 by the Friends of the Snoqualmie Valley Trail and River opposing the city's water system plan. I've been very concerned about our water situation, and I'm concerned about the increased density and consumption of water both residential and commercial that might be implied by this code. Thank you much, and this concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Do we have anyone else?
We do not.
Okay. Back to you, council. Looking for a hand. Anybody got questions? Ms. Miller? Were you waving or?
No.
Okay.
Thank you,
Floor
Mr.
is
Mayor.
yours.
Thank you. I too have some definitely concerns about the height. It's almost a potential of if one builds to that level, others will follow. We want to be very, very careful about that. I have concerns about parking. Some of it discusses the potential of underground parking. I think we need to take a little bit more time and thought in that. I have special concerns about, I know it might bug you, Brendan, but colors and tones being used on paint and making sure that we're being consistent. So we have it might be quirky in some cases, but definitely not in a tropical paint next to a black paint or something like that. I don't know, but I have some concerns, and I was hoping that I could convince you all to just bring this back to CED, a little bit more discussion, and come back at a later date and discuss further.
Jesse, do you want to explain how those items are dealt with within the form-based code?
Yeah, I guess as far as the height, the height is not being suggested to change, and so we should revisit the height at another issue. This is looking at the way we review building proposals in general, whereas height is one of many components. As far as parking goes, our Public Works Director, Mark Rigos, did touch on that, the concern with the underground parking during the work study. And though I'm not an engineer and don't want to, I guess, pontificate on geotechnical limitations, I think that there's ways that can be worked around that. We did just update our parking code 18.16 half a year ago. And so if there's concerns with our parking standards, then we can revisit those again. But if a project doesn't meet what those parking standards are, then it won't pencil out for passing muster within the development review. As far as colors and tones, there aren't, those aren't really touched upon in the form-based codes. They're touched upon in our design standards. And there are some general recommendations, but it's not very prescriptive. Those design standards are from 2010. And so if there is a desire to revisit updating those design standards, then now it's been over a decade. And so that could be an opportune thing too, but staff recommendation for that is to be at a separate time as well.
Just before we get to you, Mr. Rosen, Ms. Miller, I think we got a couple answers there. Jesse, I wanted to clarify. Thanks. I want to be sure I was clear on one of the items you were talking about parking, and I just want to be sure that whether or not, I'm not even sure if parking's addressed in this code or not, or it's handled in a separate section. But regardless of whether there was an opportunity for undergrounding or what have you, whatever the proposal would need to meet the parking standard, however it would be met. Is that correct? Yeah, it's code parking regulations 18.16 are referenced in this code, and it states that developments within the downtown commercial zone have to comply with those codes. And so this zoning proposal doesn't affect our recently updated parking standards. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Thank you.
Mr. Rosen.
I thought the way we left it after our last meeting was we were going to look at this one more time at CED. I thought that was the consensus.
That's what I felt as well.
Yeah, I remember that discussion.
Wasn't that discussion about the design? Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah. My recollection, and certainly subject to correction, was that we discussed that we would do the introduction, and depending on tonight's conversation, would be when you would either send it back to the committee or it would move forward. So that's the way that I recollected it. Was we agreed on tonight's introduction, but after tonight is what's the question, obviously.
Okay.
Other comments, questions? Ms. Colon.
I would like to do the suggestion of the heights and taking it back to the planning commission. I was sitting at Rio Bravo tonight, looking at the mountain and the tow truck place, and my significant other said, "Oh, look at the tow truck place." And I said, "You know what? One day that could be a 35-foot building and we wouldn't be looking at the mountain like we are now. So be careful for what you wish for." So I would like to look at the heights again and see what we can do about that.
Okay.
Speaking of, would you like me to share the renderings that our architects made as
I
well?
would love it.
Okay, I'll share my screen now. Just a moment. Oh, it looks, Dawn, it looks like it's disabled again. Is there a? Sorry, I don't have that functionality.
We're only a year plus into this, Jesse. Come on.
There we go. I got it. Okay. So as you can see, here's a map of the downtown. There's little cameras. This is each of the, our architects went out and took photos. So the camera is where the photo was taken and what angle. So looking all kind of towards Mount Si. So here's this scene now. And then this scene with 35 foot. And I'd like to say that there would be definitely modulation on these buildings. This is just a box building envelope. That this box would never pass our design standards, but this just gives you a demonstration of what the heights are. So this is view 1, and then view 2, and view 2 with the building envelope boxes. View 3, and then view 3 with the building envelope boxes. View 4, and then with the building envelope boxes, and then 5, and 5, the building envelopes. So I could go through those again one more time if you'd like. I see shaking heads, yes. So, all right, view 1. View 2, view 3, view 4, view 5.
And just in case anyone who's not seen these before is confused by what is being said, if I understand correctly, Jesse, the somewhat opaque box is the 35 foot, and then the clear line that's drawn back of it would be a 45. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
I'll just work back and then stop sharing unless someone wants to see a particular photo again. We could bring it back up if you all would like.
And could I ask, since it appeared to me that at least some of those shots you're showing are in the historic district that has the 35 foot limitation, or that's the 45 foot limitation?
35. So photo 1 can only go to 35 feet, and then 1, 2, and 3 can only go to 35 feet, and then the view from 4 and 5 could go to 45 feet.
Thank you. Mr. Elwood?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I want to say I recall towards the end of the work study, probably the very last discussion, I believe Ms. Deming brought up a point, or somebody brought up a point, maybe it was you, Ross, that said when we were talking about Issaquah and form-based codes that Issaquah has, and that they had a differentiated zoning for the areas that we all seem to agree on that we liked, right? Like Front Street, Gilman area. And I thought that we were going to do this as a first reading, but there was some conversation about possibly talking about exploring just the modified zoning for the historic area, in which we would do some specific zoning for that area based on what the suggestion was, or the reference was to how essentially Issaquah, even though we don't want to become like Issaquah, what Issaquah has done to preserve their historic cute areas, if you will. Does that ring a bell with anybody? And that was what I thought was going to be a future discussion, but maybe I'm misremembering.
I mean, I can bring up what I remember if that helps. We did talk about Issaquah, and I did try and look on their website to see if they were using any kind of form-based codes. I did not see any specific form-based codes listed, but they do have a downtown area plan similar to what we're proposing here through the form-based codes, just not in a form-based code version. So I didn't get any direction to pull anything specific from theirs, but I'd be, if this moves forward, I'd be happy to pull any regulations that you guys might be interested in that they have, and definitely provide a summary for the Front Street area in what Issaquah requires, if that's what you're interested in.
I think, Brendan, I think I did contribute into that. I think my comments were along the line of a supposition that their historic district, so to speak, the Front Street corridor, likely had different code than, say, other areas of the city specifically. Maybe not so much that it was form-based versus Euclidean. Another question that occurs to me as we're chatting around the height. I don't well know what restrictions are already imposed upon the historic district. And so I would ask staff, do any of those restrictions pertain to height as well as the look of the buildings? I don't know what specific restrictions apply to the historic district.
Every development that occurs in the historic district would require a development review from the King County Historic Preservation Program officers. And so that's a level of detail that, goes through lengths to make sure that the character of the downtown is maintained. And so with this zone, that would essentially be a blanket on top of that. We do what we can to preserve that character with the DC core zone, which encompasses that area and properties beyond that. An example demonstration of that is if you go to the bottom of the building typology section. It is page 25 in the regulating plan. Then we've captured some historic features that should be considered in developments. And so, that was kind of the theme with the two separate transects within the one zone, was that the historic district characters preserved, the areas around the historic district relate to it. And then there's more of a mixed use flexible area that blends in better with the residential areas surrounding on the outsides of that. And so that's kind of why the transects look the way they do, which is the transect map is shown on, excuse me, that would be, looks like the numbers aren't showing up, but 112 on my packet, so it sounds like 114 on your packet.
It's 108.
And that was kind of the preservation, the kind of to building off council members Elwood comment on Front Street, that's kind of the intent that we had with the downtown commercial cores transect. So it's kind of like a subzone.
So make sure that we're all understanding that, meaning that you're suggesting a more strict treatment for that darker red zone.
Yes, one that's closer in line with the historic district.
And broader than the current historic district.
Yeah, but it wouldn't, the areas outside of the historic district wouldn't require King County Historic Preservation Program folks doing design review.
Okay. Mr. Elwood.
Couple questions, and one's just going to be one that probably can't be answered. But the first one is, has there been any expressed interest in the downtown corridor by any developers to change what's there now and go up? That's come through. That's my first question. Then the second question is, when thinking about having to go up in the downtown core, even to 35 feet, it seems to me to be a cost prohibitive proposition, given stormwater, roads, when I think about everything that a new development would have to do, say, and even if you looked at North Bend Chevy dealership, they'd have to do a ground contamination thing. I mean, there's a lot of things that would have to go into actually going vertical right on the North Bend Way. So one question is, again, is there any expressed interest? Two, what would you expect or anticipate, and this one may not be answerable, would it be cost prohibitive for somebody to really want to go up along that way?
As far as folks interested in increased heights within the downtown, we do have one project in the proposal phase that's for a assisted living facility that's just west of the poorhouse, between the poorhouse and the South Fork. And Dave, I don't know if you recall what the heights were. It's Mike McCarty's project, but I believe it was their original ask was for 6 stories, and then it's come down since.
They're down to 4.
Okay.
And 3 on the frontage and 4 on the downhill slope. But to answer your question directly, Brendan, we've had probably 4 developers come in with projects. Many of them have gone to CED, trial balloon type projects at 4 stories. And the story that we're getting from people who are building either condominiums, apartments, or boutique hotels is that going up to that height gives them enough floor area for revenue to make it work. And a lot of them have had parking under and then a parking in a lot next to them or whatever. The thing that you run into that's a problem with parking in the downtown, you run into it everywhere, is that most downtowns were built historically with 0 lot line. So when they were built originally, you didn't have a parking issue because people didn't park cars. And those lotting patterns and those 0 lot line patterns have stayed in downtowns. So what you usually have is a parking district, and you construct public parking. And that's why we continually restripe or use areas for public parking in the downtown, but outside of the downtown, everybody builds their own parking. So what we hear from the industry is that people would like to be able to go to 4 stories, or they wouldn't be proposing projects that way. Alternatively, we get other projects like the 5 cottages that are over on 2nd Street, and they're typical single family heights. And by the way, they go up to the 35 feet and they don't seem to be objectionable. So I think when you're talking about building height, be careful, because I don't think anybody's going to build a concrete block building like any of the drawings. And I don't think those drawings help a lot, because I think you have to have upper floor setbacks. You have to have modulations. We even make people break buildings up. Remember, if you're doing multifamily, you can't do more than 10 units in a building the way that our code works today. So there are a lot of things that we do in terms of color, materials, height and bulk, setbacks, fenestration, that's windows and treatment. There's a ton of design review we go through. And to assume we would have a pink and a black building next to one another, or a block building that blocks the mountains out and has absolutely no treatment on it, is really kind of an affront to all the work that you've done in the past and all the design review that we put everybody through. So if we're going to talk about this, let's talk about it with a little more sophistication and talk about what we want to see and what quality buildings look like, rather than getting hung up on one thing. Because that's just not the way building design matures and turns into something that's attractive. You might have a feature on a building, a clock tower or something that goes above the height, and you might like it. So we just have to be careful about throwing everything out with one criteria.
Council. Brendan, did we get to your questions? You had the floor. Okay. Let's see. Before I call back to you, Ms. Colon, I just want to see if anyone who hasn't spoken wanted to speak. Seeing no one, Ms. Colon.
This is not about height. It's just about the wording in the ordinance. There's a lot of shall, should, and may words being used. So shall meaning you will do it this way. Should, we want you to do it this way, but you don't have to. And may, you can do whatever you want. And so that worries me a bit.
So the regulating plan recently did go through legal review from Mr. Kenyon, an extensive review, and there was a bit of editing to that and questions back and forth, and me going over things with staff on what should be a shall, a should, and a may. And yes, you're right in that shall is you have to do it. Should is we highly encourage, and may is at your discretion. And so there has been a lot of effort towards that. Are there particular areas that worry you, specific parts of the regulating plan?
Well, I'm not savvy enough to know. I just feel like these wordings give people a lot of leeway to do whatever they want. And I don't know if we would have a say in any of that at that point.
Comment in the cold. Let's see, Heather, you're on that CED committee. Ross, you're the chair. Is that correct, or am I off this year?
I am.
Mary Miller is the chair.
Mary's the chair. Okay. I don't know if that was addressed at the committee level. Thanks. Oh, it's
We haven't
Mary,
had that meeting.
Jonathan.
We haven't had that meeting yet.
Can I ask a
That's what I was hoping to.
question to her question, if I may. My assumption is, and please keep me honest here, Jesse, that the planning commission would have gone through that with a fine tooth comb. I remember spending wee hours into the evening, shall, may, should, line by line. I'm assuming that same process probably went through the planning commission as well. Would that be accurate?
Yes, this I went through introduction, hearing, and then final recommendation, and it also went through legal review.
Thanks.
If I could just say one thing, I mean, the purpose of the legal review is to make sure that those three terms have three separate definitions. That's what the case law requires. That's what the dictionary requires. And I think you all know this, but whether it goes back to CED or otherwise, where to place the shall and where to place the should and where to place the may is a policy decision for the council to decide. Jesse's
Thank
done
you.
and staff's done a lot of work to put them in what they think is the appropriate place.
Yeah, that is an important distinction. It's not, the placement is not driven by legal, it's the definition driven by legal. Yeah. Mary, I'm sorry, you were saying this did not go through committee. I believe it, am I wrong that it?
No, yeah, because we went through the full council work study multiple times, that's where we had discussed bringing it back to the full council instead of to CED initially, because we wanted to make sure from that initial work study that all of the individual concerns that the whole council had, and then decide if we wanted to take it to CED to work out those concerns or whether we kept it at the full council.
Great, thank you. That helps me a lot. Thank you. Other thoughts?
Can
Mr. Elwood.
you just remind me what's at stake with the decision we're making here tonight?
So we currently do not have you recommending or approving really, because we don't have the whole thing in front of you. We're trying to understand what the issues are, work through the issues with you if we can work through them today, or see whether you guys want to bring it back to another meeting to actually have the full ordinance for approval, or whether you want to go back to CED to work through the concerns you guys still have. So we're not asking for it to be approved and be done today at all.
And I would say based counsel on what I've heard so far, I think I'm hearing a couple of options, with the most likely being that you direct this back to the CED committee for further evaluation. The other choice would be from some of the things that were said, since height and things like color are handled separately, parking handled separately, you could choose to move this part of the code forward, whether it be at the next council meeting or a future council meeting, and direct that those specific items then be taken up by staff in the appropriate way, whether that be at a CED meeting or back to the planning commission. But again, based so far on what I'm hearing, I think I'm hearing if not a majority, enough council members wanting a little more thought through the CED committee. So that would be my recommendation, I think, to you. But I need to hear from everybody. And it's your motion.
I
I say
would
move
like
it
to
back
take more
to
time. Oh, sorry, Alan.
That's okay. I'd say, I mean, it sounds like people want to talk about it, so let's move it back to CED. It seems like they've got, and see where we go. I like the Forms Bay Code. I'm concerned, I guess, with the heights like everybody, but I'm curious as to how we came up with those heights when they were originally designed at that point. So
Yep.
If it helps, I just looked up the height for that Issaquah cultural and business district, which is at 40 feet or 3 stories is what the Issaquah code for Front Street, that downtown Front Street is.
And I don't think they've got a building that comes close to that. Mr. Rosen.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some concern about height, and this is the time to fix it. So let's look at this. Let's not just push it forward because, well, that's kind of what's there already. Let's go fix it. If we don't like it, we have that opportunity right here, right now to fix that. And we can start at CED and then let the council weigh in as well. But I think at least 3 of the CED members are here. We can hear some of the concerns that are being expressed and try to formulate something out of CED that reflects those concerns from council. So I'd like to see it go back to CED as well.
Thank you. Okay. So let's see. So what I need here, it sounds to me like the motion that's in the packet is not the one that we're choosing. And we want to instead, I believe the correct term, Mr. Kenyon, would be to remand back to the CED. And
That's an appropriate term, so just motion to
okay.
send it back or remand it to CED.
Okay. So do we have, before we ask for the motion, just make sure we've covered everybody, Mr. Godhill?
Yeah, one quick question on that. At the time that we put it to CED, I mean, I think it would be a good idea if we are concerned with the height to see Planning Commission and get input from our citizens if that's a concern. So is it go to the CD and then move it to the planning, or should we, assume at some point, I'd like to hear what the public has to say. I've got an opinion, but I'm one of multiple citizens.
So I can tell you a little bit what we heard about height coming from the Planning Commission. We didn't have much specific to a reduction in height. No one brought that up during the public hearing, and height was part of the discussion. We did hear from the planning commissioners that they were concerned. One of the terms was taking away the rights of the existing property owners for the heights that are in existence. And so they did not recommend discussing any kind of reduction in height. They did open for the public hearing. The staff did have a different height map, which was more in line with the two districts. So first discussion was to have the core district at the higher and the mixed use district at the lower. Then we discussed with the historic district and then the core and running with the transects. And so it was a big discussion through the planning commission that we ended up with leaving it as the code states now. So I can tell you we did have that discussion, but not against taking it back and seeing if they want to make a different recommendation. But we did hear from them that they weren't wanting to discuss at this time a lower height on their own at least without council direction to do that.
Just a note through the mayor. If you're going to take it back and change the rights that people have on their property, I highly recommend that we notify everybody who will be affected about it, because everybody has an opinion about somebody else's property, but we really need to have the property owners themselves react to it.
Thank you for that reminder, Dave. That's exactly where I was going to go. What I was hearing when we started the conversation tonight was that if we are going to open up lowering heights, in particular, changing the heights, that we really need to go back through the full process on that item through the planning commission, make sure that, just as you're saying, that the property owners impacted are notified about that specific conversation, hold a hearing. Of course, that hearing could be held planning commission or at council. But that's not really something I'd want to see just the committee make a decision on and bring it forward. I don't think any of you would be well served by that route.
That's why I was asking, do we want to do parallel tracks? So remand it back to CED, but also move it, because it sounds like the majority of council would like to get some input on it. And I think, as me, it's a surprise, especially when you show the view shed. When you say what's the normal height, people are thinking it's already at the height level. I'm not sure people realize that you go up to 35, and then if we go up to 45, and I want every, business owner and builder to, shoot their case the same as everybody else.
Yeah. What I would perhaps suggest as you send this back to committee is that the committee better refine the issues to be decided, and then based on that conversation, they can help direct staff, for particular, if height's going to be adjusted, then they can say, okay, that's got to go back to the planning commission. Maybe just as an example, the conversation around color, after there's been more conversation around color, maybe that gets set aside or said to be taken up as a separate issue later. But I think maybe the committee can kind of help refine the different comments that you're making tonight, weigh these issues out, and work with staff on the path from there back to planning commission. I would say also that so far, the majority of what I'm hearing is this is a very large piece of legislation, and I'm hearing by the absence of comment, I guess I would say overall, that it feels like you are mostly content with the majority of this, with these several significant issues to work out. Mr. Elwood.
Thank you. I was just curious from a frame of reference, with any of the buildings downtown, some of them have facades. Is there any building downtown plus the facade that gets us even close to the 30, 35 foot? Just as a frame of reference. I'm not sure, but.
I'd say off the top of my head, the Masonic Lodge and the Sunset Garage are probably the two tallest buildings downtown, but I do not have a feel for if either of those comes anywhere near 35 feet. I don't know that.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to rabbit hole it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think understanding better the heights that are there certainly helps. Yeah.
But it sounded like your recap seemed sound from my point of view, since I still have the floor, that what you just said is kind of my general vibe too. So.
Okay. Are there other thoughts or things that suggestions to the committee that you want before we move to a motion?
I would just like to say that the decisions that we make on this are going to affect our town for decades. And so we're basically deciding how to design this town. And it's a very, very serious matter to me. So I would like to take our time and be very thoughtful about it.
Okay. So we need a motion to remand. Maybe I could look first to the chair of the committee, if you wanted to frame it, or if we have somebody who's got some wording in mind. I didn't jot anything down myself just yet, but I think it's a fairly simple motion.
Well, motion to remand our form-based code for a later date at CED.
And
meeting.
Could I suggest that we just cite the AB number in that motion?
Which is, where the heck is it?
AB 21-037.
AB 21-07, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, I've got a motion by Ms. Miller, second by Ms. Cullen. Let me read the motion the way that I've heard it, and please confirm it. Move to remand AB 21-037, an ordinance amending North Bend Municipal Code, Chapter 1810, zoning districts, and creating a new Chapter 1812 downtown commercial zone, back to the CED committee. Does that meet your motion, Ms. Miller?
That's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Cullen, do you agree with the second?
I do. I agree.
All right. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Did I hear a no? I just heard somebody moaning. Okay, motion carries. It is unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Great conversation, and more to come. I think a good decision. And with that, we are reaching toward the end of the evening's agenda for the council meeting. Mayor, council, administrator concerns and initiatives. Ms. Miller.
Nothing ends tonight. Just keep everybody safe out there, including yourselves.
Thank you. Mr. Godhelp.
The only thing I've got is we're starting to see light later in the day, so the kids are out and playing. So please be aware as you're driving through your neighborhoods that we have more kids out, and drive accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Laudenbach.
Just everybody, please. We're seeing another resurgence of our notorious COVID variants in the neighborhood, and we really need to maintain our due diligence, stay masked, keep washing your hands. Some strains are more virulent than others. We have several first responders here that can attest to that, and it is impacting younger populations, particularly those of school age. So let's do our part. Let's keep going. And hopefully by summertime, we'll all be inoculated and we can put this in our rearview mirror.
Thank you. Mr. Rosen.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Elwood.
Just to echo Mr. Laudenbach's sentiments, we're not in COVID clear yet. So continue to be mindful of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, anything for the administration?
Just a couple of quick ones. The first one is that I will be meeting, and I think the mayor's going to join me and Rebecca on Thursday morning with the hotel developer at the Outlet Mall, giving them the guidance of what they have to do to get a formal application in. So we will be having more to come on that to show everybody, and we meet with them on Thursday. Second one, just a shout out to our Public Works Department for obtaining over $800,000 design grant for the 4th Street Roundabout. They were moved up in the competition because we were ready and a lot of other cities weren't. So good news on that. We will take the crown of the roundabout capital of Washington away from whoever has it within the next couple of years.
Thank you. Ms. Cullen, did I miss you?
You did.
I apologize.
That's okay. So I'm with Ross on this. Everybody who wants a vaccine, get a vaccine as soon as you can, because we're in a race to outbeat those variants, and they are very serious. So if you want one, get one as soon as you can.
Thank you very much. Did I miss anyone else? I apologize. All right. Just a few things then in summary. The city's yard waste recycling program will begin on Saturday, April 17th and run on select Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon at the Public Works Shop. Calendar of dates and event runs is available by visiting the news and highlights section of the city website. Pointing out to those of you who use the more eastern portions of North Bend Way that a water main installation work will be taking place next week it's as part of the Cedar River apartment project and near 436th Street. This work is starting around the Public Works facility and working east. Travelers in the area can expect lane shifts or alternating traffic during the construction process. Effective April 15th, all Washington residents 16 years or older will be eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. As some couple council members spoke, would certainly encourage you to get that vaccine if you, as soon as you are able and if you are inclined to do so. For more information about the vaccine and how to find a vaccine location near you, please visit the news section of the city's website. Although we are ramping up this vaccination effort, we are continuing to see an uptick in the COVID-19 cases locally and countywide. Please do your part to help prevent the spread of the virus by continuing to wear your mask and maintain a social distance. We're almost there, folks. We've just got to bear down just a little bit longer, and I feel that we'll have overcome the hump. But I heard just this morning from King County Health that we are seeing another surge, and they're concerned that it's going to rise to the level where the governor might need to impose restrictions again. None of us want to go there. Hang in there. Finally, special thank you to Eastside Fire and Rescue for all of their hard work assisting with the mobile COVID-19 vaccinations of our most at-risk community members. ERNF has spent the past 3 months carefully planning, training, and executing vaccinations to protect the North Bend community, and I know they're working beyond our area as well. their efforts are helping us to reopen and the valued community members regain normalcy in their daily lives. And I just want to add to that, I'm hearing that far and wide. It's not just that we're noticing it here, but when I'm in regional meetings, their efforts are being recognized at the King County level. So kudos to ER&F for that. With that, I'll remind council and the public that we're going to close the council meeting, and then we're going to move into a work study. I'm going to suggest that we take a short break between. And if you're a member of the public and wish to stay for the work study, you of course can do that. I'll take the direction from Ms. Smaskow on how we're going to handle the actual process of the turnover. But with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Godell, second by Mr. Elwood. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Council, please remember, we'll take a short break. Let's try and keep